benefit of the super city is that we can finally plan ahead. And I'll give you an example at a local level. I've had pretty much crisis meetings with a number of my schools in Auckland Central because we've never planned for the growth that's happened. And so we've got schools that are overloaded, and we've never actually planned for that. In the CBD, we have pretty much no community or social infrastructure. We've got a CAB at the library, we've got the Pioneer Women's Hall. But what does that mean? If you actually look at a lot of the research that's now coming out of the CBD, we've got some very serious social issues there. We've got some youth homelessness, we've got massive issues with some of the international students that have come to New Zealand, and they lack both access to various public services. So there's some pretty big challenges around ensuring that we plan in the future for both transport and social infrastructure. But also there's some massive opportunities under the new structure to really lift the quality of life of Aucklanders, but also our economic development as a city and as a country. So I hope I haven't sounded too negative, because I am actually very positive about the future of Auckland. I think the other day I gave a speech actually to the Hugo Group, and this sort of brings me back to some of the national issues. I think that I see Auckland as not, I think the massive competition in the future is about cities, and Auckland is our only real city of scale, and so our competition is between Sydney and Melbourne, and arguably as well some of now the Asian countries. And so if you think about how we're going to be able to compete with those cities, then, and Jeff Kennett made this point, then being able to offer a decent quality of life when you've got issues in terms of wage is actually really important. I mean, there are certain chief executives who have said to me that when they ask candidates where they would like to live, they actually put quality of life a lot higher than some of the wage offerings. So actually being able to offer an environment that people want to live in is actually going to be a competitive advantage in the future. The second thing that I'd say is, at a national level, part of my interest has been environmental. And some of you may have known my mining stance on Great Barrier Island. Now, one of the points that I would make about that was I'm not opposed to mining at all. I absolutely believe that we have some massive opportunities in terms of mineral exploration in New Zealand, and they need to be realised. However, I think there are two things. One is that we need to be clear where the case doesn't stack up. And for Great Barrier Island, the case did not stack up. This is a small island 30 minutes off downtown Auckland, and it's very arguable, some of the mining reports that were actually written around Great Barrier, whether there's anything there. Even if there was anything there, there's massive infrastructure that would need to be delivered to actually make that happen. But the second thing that I would say is, I believe fundamentally that the mineral exploration is a phase. So if you look at the countries that are pouring a lot into R&D, they're actually looking at three issues. One is, and APEC have realised this, the three issues that the world will face in the next 20 years are food security, water security, and energy security. And I see massive opportunities for our country in those three areas, because we have a natural advantage, both from an environmental perspective, but secondly, we have a relatively good, I think, history in terms of our intellectual property in those areas. And so I believe fundamentally that part of the economic discussion that has to happen in the future is us being able to look at ourselves and say, are we going to be a nation of everymans, or are we going to focus on a few areas? And I would argue that actually those are three areas. If you think about what some of the challenges the world's going to face in the next 20 years, those are three areas where we've got some natural competitive advantages, and we need to, I think, focus more on. And so my Bachelor of Science in Genetics and partly some of my technology background, that's where I'm also spending quite a bit of time at a national level looking at. And I think if you look at Auckland, there are some areas within that we can specialise in, but also there's a few other areas that we need to think about. I think the area of digital media, and I've got a group of people that I'm bringing together over the next month, so looking at the convergence of what we're doing in television, film and animation. There's some very exciting things happening, like down at October Animation in Freeman's Bay, and saying, well, how are we going to compete? Now, I'm very open about the fact that I don't, philosophically, I don't believe that government needs to be absolutely in their boots and all, but I do see my role as a community leader to help facilitate those discussions and be able to say, is there anything else that we can do to make it easier? And also, I do think that the history, from an economic perspective, of our country is trying to compete at everything, rather than specialising and focusing on a few more core areas. So I hope I've given you a bit of a snapshot of some of my interests at a central government level, but also at an Auckland level, just to give you a bit of perspective that I feel very positive about the future of Auckland, but I think the next 2 years there's some very big decisions to be made, and our ability as a government to work with the current mayor and be able to deliver some of that core infrastructure is going to be crucial, and I am very involved in some of those discussions, so I welcome anyone else who thinks they have something to contribute in that area. Finally, just touch a little bit on this year. I realise I can't veer into the area of politics too much, but it comes back to what I was saying before about sort of looking back at New Zealand, and I felt a sense of urgency about our country that I didn't feel was necessarily sensed as strongly with a lot of my generation. And I still feel that sense of urgency. I'm very confident in some of the people that we have leading the helm. As I say, I think John has an amazing ability, not only from a policy perspective, but from his experience, but he's got a great heart, and you see that in the polls, and that a lot of people who have never voted National are willing to him. But I think the next 5 years is crucial for New Zealand, and I don't know that New Zealanders understand that, because I worry about that, because if we don't make some hard calls in the next few years, then it's very personal for me, because I can list my friends that are leaving New Zealand. So it's a time of, it is a high pressure time, it's a crunch time for New Zealand, but it is a time of opportunity. And I think we have made some hard changes, like in the area of Auckland governments, but there are more to come. And so I thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you.